Hi, beautiful badasses. How are ya? Glad you're back. I wanted to talk today a little bit about when we're struggling with inner conflict, where one part of ourself is maybe pulling us in one direction and the other part of ourself is pulling us in another. And so I brought a nifty little handout today, and it's from a therapy called Internal Family Systems Therapy. And this is such a beautiful conceptualization of the different parts of ourselves. So I'm going to put this up here, see if you can see it. So it kind of breaks the different parts of ourselves down into 4 different aspects. And the first one, if you can see it, it's probably flipped actually. It's probably backwards because of the way my camera is going, but the first part is our exiles part. And these are the parts that hold really vulnerable and painful emotions. And emotions like shame, emotions like anger, rage, these are the parts of ourselves that feel the most rejected, the most isolated, the most where we just don't feel like we are good enough to belong. These are kind of like our inner wounded parts. They tend to be like younger parts of ourselves. And that is really uncomfortable to sit in for too long. And so if you have an exile, you're probably likely to also have a manager. And again, I'm sorry, I know it's backwards, but managers are usually kind of an internalized, overly critical parent, or maybe even an abusive parent. They are the parts of ourselves that are really critical, really judgmental. They're also really helpful because they manage us and they manage our exiled parts. They're like, pip, pip now, keep going. We have to go to work today. And they are the parts of ourselves, they're kind of protectors of our system. And they're like, push through, push forward, keep going. Perfectionism lives here, stuff like that. But inevitably, the exiles and the emotions that are held within those parts of ourselves, those emotions inevitably swell up. The metaphor that I often use is, like in cartoons, old school cartoons, where the water is coming through the wall and Daffy Duck tries to plug it up with one finger and then it starts to come out the other, and by the time he's done, he's got all 10 fingers and toes trying to stop this water from coming through the wall. And our emotions are kind of like that water. It's coming if we don't really deal and process those emotions. And so when that flood comes, that's when our firefighters show up. And our firefighters are like, the swell of emotion comes, and the firefighters come in and is like, we got to put that out right now. We're going to tamp those yucky emotions and those uncomfortable and vulnerable emotions down. I think I just spit on myself. I'm so excited about this. So the firefighters tend to be our parts that are, they kind of check out from our pain or numb out from our pain. Our addictions can be in our firefighter part, binge eating, suicidality on the rougher end of things, but also just, zoning out on our phone or staying busy or just fantasy can also be a firefighter of I'm going to fantasize about a different life or check out from these emotions. Compulsions, obsessions, stuff like that. Those are also protectors of the system, but they tend to be more intense and, less quote unquote functional than the manager parts. And then the fourth part is the self. And we all have these beautiful qualities of self. And when we're in self, we are curious, we're compassionate, we are connected, we're courageous, we have clarity. What else is on here? Did I say compassion? I think so. Confidence and creative. So there's 8 C's of the qualities of self. And the idea is, and what can help resolve these inner conflicts. So, an example is an exiled part is probably longing for connection. Please, help me, see me, connect with me. And maybe a manager or a firefighter is like, nope, connection is dangerous, stay far away from that, and kind of cuts off from relationships. And so there you have that fragmented part of ourselves where one is pulling us in one direction and the other part is pulling us in a different direction. And so the metaphor that I often use to help resolve this is to think of the self, the qualities of self, as like a really healthy, nurturing, protective, wise caregiver. And sometimes we have to practice those skills if we weren't given those skills. And they kind of help mediate and validate and support and set boundaries for the other members of our system. So that's why it's internal family systems. It's like this internal little family living within us. And the more unresolved stuff we have in our past, the bigger these parts and the more fragmented these parts and the more parts we have. And so the more that we can practice being in our qualities of self and help to mediate these parts, because here's the other thing, it's not Survivor. We can't kick any parts off the island. And guess what happens when we try to do that? They get bigger. And so when we recognize what their intention is, even our most frustrating parts, if we do struggle with addiction or the parts of us that cut off from relationship, they have benevolent intentions. They were once adaptive and they help. And so when they're out of balance, we can't kick them off. We have to sort of learn to integrate them. And that's why this illustration is so beautiful, because the self is at the center and these parts kind of have a seat around the table. So the metaphor that I use is like a sitting around a campfire or sitting around a dinner table together. And like you get a voice at the table and you get a voice at the table, but no parts get to come in and take over the system, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something. So if you're struggling with some, internal conflict or inner conflict, this is a really helpful way of being able to see the different parts of ourselves, understand how they were once helpful, and to greet them with curiosity and compassion, and to maybe give them a different way of coping or a different job. So hopefully that is good information for you, and I'm just honored that you continue to join me in watching these videos, and I hope you have a fabulous week. All right, bye.